Final thing, we're going to try to go without a mic today, but if the ambient sound starts raising up, put up your hands and we'll get ourselves on mic'd up. We're ready for that.
I think I can hopefully project loud enough. Despite the embarrassing introduction, I am very grateful to be here speaking to you today. I have had the pleasure, the opportunity, and the incredible luck to have spent a long time in the nonprofit sector. Why I started when I was 3 was because my parents, God bless them, are wonderful people who got me volunteering, going door to door, raising money for different causes when I was 3. Because firstly, it's a really effective way to do it. If your 3-year-old walks up, knocks, would you please? And you can't say no. But secondly, what I'm grateful for is it allowed me to see the sector from a bunch of different perspectives. As a 3-year-old, as a volunteer, then as a youth volunteer, then as a manager, then as an executive director of a national organization, then as a board member, then as a consultant, and then finally as a lawyer, where I did some work in the charitable law sector, which was fascinating and interesting. It's actually still, I don't practice law full time anymore, but it is an area that I do still do some work because I love it so much. But right now I get the chance to work with some of the most amazing people I've met in my entire life, 2 of whom happen to be here today, at a company, for-profit social enterprise called Kiva, where we build technology for the nonprofit sector. I'm not going to sell you Kiva today. That's not what I'm here to do. Although, if you want to be sold, please let me know, and I'll happily do that during our beers. The word Kila is really important in the conversation, in the context of this conversation, because my family's from East Africa, and it means every or all. And the idea that we have to be able to facilitate and allow people working remotely because of disability, because of geography, because of all these things, and let them all participate as staff members, as volunteers, is such a fun, it's a fortuitous meaning to the word of our organization, but also why we're here today. And I really want to stress that we're going to learn about some of the challenges in the of having a remote team, but there are so many benefits, and I want to underscore that and how important that is, especially with accessibility. So the problem isn't so much of a problem, it's just a challenge. But there's a couple things to note, and I'm a bit of a dork, so I'm going to defer to data and studies a couple times without belaboring them. The first one is, I want you to turn to graph A. And that shows there are 2 places where performance of teams is most effective. The first one is when everybody is in the same floor of a building. So if we all worked in here, that would create legitimate efficiency and effective communication, etc. The second one is when everyone is in the same city. Different mechanisms, but still get a lot of the benefits which we'll talk about. However, unfortunately, or as we know, that doesn't always exist. We have volunteers, we have projects, we have organizations that are national, that are global, we have people that move that are such important parts of all of the organizations that we work for. So it means that we, as leaders, as staff members, as volunteers, need to find a way to mimic the interactions that lead to these 2 effective places, right? We need to find ways to do that. And so part of what we're going to be chatting about today is, in fact, thinking about some of those ways. The second graph is about highlight some of the differences between face-to-face and virtual teams. So that's the work itself. And there's a couple things that are really interesting to me. The first one is a big part of the challenges becoming managing conflict, right? I don't know, but my wife will tell you I'm a terrible text message communicator, because I am, right? Digital communication is hard. Emotions, intonation, all these things are, now with emojis, maybe not, but basically they're lost, right? And we see this, the literature shows us this with regards to managing virtual teams. The second thing is about decisions. Communication is so much easier when you're sitting in the room, right? When we're talking. Again, you can see some of the intangibles. There's that stupid statistic, like 70% of what you're saying isn't the words, but it's the intonations and the body language. So, and the last one is about expressing opinions, and that really goes into decision making, because expressing opinions in a way when you feel isolated, when you feel X, when you feel Y, is challenging. But it's so important that we find sets of tools to facilitate this, because allowing that is really important. Who here works at an organization that has either remote staff or a telecommuting policy? That's almost, 70% maybe? A lot of people in this room. And we are actually over-representative of that, because according to the nonprofit Human Resource Guide or research, it says at least 43% of the nonprofits have these formal telecommuting processes. And my assumption is a lot of that is caught in the informal. Oh, I want to work from home, or people who have taken paternity or maternity leave or disability or whatever, they're working from home too. So my assumption is that number is going to be north of 50 for sure. The second, obviously, so that's one kind of remote work. The other kind is when you have different offices or different cities or different countries. Volunteers with global work. When I was the executive director at End Poverty Now, we had projects in 7 countries. Maybe it was 6, I don't know. Anyway, a lot of countries. And we had volunteers either from local organizations in those countries or from our head office or from Canada who'd gone there. So we face this problem too. Especially with the rise of this in the corporate world, we're starting to see that nonprofits are being increasingly pushed to have these kinds of policies in place. And if we're going to allow our staff, our fellow staff, our volunteers, whatever, to do them, we need to make sure we're putting in those structures. But I don't want to make it seem like this is a bad thing, right? This is a good thing. This is an enablement thing. This is an accessibility thing. And so, why? Because it widens the talent you can get. Has anybody here heard of the website Catch a Fire? It's a great example of how powerful managed or remote volunteers can be. It's a website where you post micro projects for people to micro volunteer from all around the world. So it's like if I'm a graphics designer and I want to volunteer, I can go to Catch Fire and take on a small little project or whatever. They're a Chicago-based organization. But Catch a Fire is a great example of empowering remote work, empowering your organization, right? And the last piece, I don't want to overstress it, is really about that accessibility piece. And it's really important to me having friends and colleagues and whatever that have different kinds of disabilities and challenges. We need to accommodate those things. We need to, because their value to our organizations is incredible and often undervalued, right? So that's really important to allow that. So, before we move on, I want to take a minute for all of you on your phones or on your notebooks. I prefer notebooks because I'm a bit, like I said, a bit of a dork. And I ask you, for those of you who put your hand up, what is the biggest challenge you face with managing your scattered teams? So just take a second, 15, 30 seconds, and I'll throw some hands. What's the number 1 or number 2 challenges that you face doing that? And for those of you who have not currently working on them, what do you think that challenge could or would be? 30 seconds, and then we'll open it up.
Official and being so I don't get to contribute to the development of that because all that happens when you're like in the hallway, you hear something I can do this with what I know. Instead of hear about like, here's the thing that actually is going on. I have a lot of experience with it. And also one that else, like how do I make sure that
Does anyone need more time? So does anybody want to share? Gentlemen in the back.
To really to communicate, because people can't just watch over your shoulder.
Does anybody want to take a chance to share? I know the gentleman in the back had jumped his hand up. Did you have something did you want to share? One? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, put your hand up. Please.
My name is Seth. Here's a story. During the last 4 years, I created the most efficient global system to automatically stop scam phone calls using freelancers all over the world, stretching from Nepal to Egypt, from San Francisco to Belarus. I'm working still. I have a meeting, I have a session after this until 2 o'clock every night. Challenges? There are many challenges. What you want to hear? Well, let's start with, first of all, it's very hard to find good, reliable persons that don't cheat, don't lie to you, especially from, I don't want to say which region of the world, but probably everybody knows. It's not Russia. The other side. So this is the first challenge. You spend time, hours and hours and nights to find persons. So let's say I found 3 persons. Now, second challenge is, one of the challenges is the time difference, but forget it, it's in my bill and don't sleep. Anyways, but the other thing is the coordination. You have to explain to them in very clear terms what we expect them to do. So the thing is, you have this big project, you have to cut in small pieces, very small pieces. Say, okay, this, and so on. That's your job, also. And they do. The biggest challenge and the nasty one is they lose interest. The guy that I was working, he's from India, very good guy, 4 years. And at the beginning, when I was selecting people, I said, I will never work with this person because of the communication, the way they communicate. But then, removing one by one, he was the last. That's just, I said, okay, well, let's start. We'll see. Maybe if I can get you don't know. So we worked 4 years. Then this fellow, he's a programmer, right? I'm doing the software for this system from the scratch. I'm not using any platforms or other. So we're doing from the scratch. We got every security, everything. So at some point, he created his own company and put me on the back burner. So he disappeared. He got second shot. 1 month, he's not working. He doesn't tell me. I said, well, tell me. Even though in America we are transparent. I mean, we can tell. Oh, look, I have a bad stomach today. I'm not going to work. So you adjust your schedule or whatever, right? But keep the things rolling. So he didn't tell me. Then the second job, blah blah blah, and then suddenly, okay, no, he disappeared. And what happened? Well, I have my own company. Look, if you want us to work for you, I have a brilliant employee, but you have to pay me $1,000 a month as a salary. He's going to work for you for 4
I just want to get some room for a couple other people that also contribute.
Okay, well, that's the last thing. To me, he lost interest and lived in nowhere. Then I found this February another person in Russia, brilliant guy, and he left me similar way, not the same way, but that's the
recruitment, project management, and ongoing engagement are kind of like the three sort of challenges that you say you found.
Yeah, how to keep those people. That's for me. That's the biggest challenge.
Right.
Thank you. Ma'am, you had big challenges for working remotely?
Yes. I'm Zoe. I work with an organization called Music Heals. So we raise awareness about music therapy and fundraise on music therapy programs. So I'd say one of our biggest challenges right now is the fact that we have a lot of support across Canada in terms of people who want to help, a really, really great volunteer network, but because our home office is here and our core staff of 2 is here, there's a bit of a lack of on-the-ground leadership. So thinking about that, and then thinking about setting up leaders in other places and how they can be best supported. Yeah.
Anybody else want to have a quick challenge? Quick being the
lots of that personal day-to-day interaction
Yep.
with staff and not being able to check in with how things are going with them in an informal sort of way, and then finding out, weeks later that things are going horrible, and then they crash and burn.
So we're actually going to talk about every single. Thankfully, this worked out because nobody threw a curveball to me. The literature and the experiences generally outline 5. Okay, lack of trust, which I think you alluded to. Lack of communication or poor communication, which you definitely talked about, Amanda. Low accountability, which you also mentioned, sir. Low morale, which I think everyone in some way mentioned, especially Amanda. You kind of alluded to it. You definitely alluded to it. I forgot your name, Stephanie? Zoe.
Yeah.
Zoe talked about just the pure organization of it all, and we'll definitely talk about that. And the last one, and that one is the one that I faced the most in working remotely, and that was loneliness. I've worked many times remotely, like for many different organizations, and you don't get the fun part of the job, right? You don't get the people. And that's a huge challenge, and there's no solution, but we're going to start to talk about some ways to engage. So, we are going to spend the next 35, if you can keep me quiet quickly, minutes talking about 8 best practices, 8 of them. They are not rocket science. I'm not that smart. What they are, though, are just gentle reminders to stuff that we all definitely do, or we all intend to do when we're setting our work. Like I said, this is not, I'm not revolutionizing anything. It's just a reminder, something to think about, a refresher, so to speak. So the first one, having goals. The second one, scheduling. The third one, breaking with that schedule. The fourth one, consistency in staff and volunteer treatment. The fifth one, keeping. Did you want to jump in?
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering if we'll be able to.
Absolutely. Phil's at the back. He's going to make sure that Eli and his team have them, and then they can send them around. And we also, at the end, have a managing a scattering team handout that'll allow you to take this back to your teams at home or on the bus or whatever it is, and start to think through in a kind of more. I'm a write guy. Like I like to write, so that's my way of learning. But thank you. I should have said that at the beginning. That's my fault. Number 5, consistency in staff. 4, consistency in staff treatment, volunteer treatment. This is a tough one. We'll get into that a little. Communication lines, big one, easy one to identify, hard one to solve. Prioritizing professional development, and everyone in the sector goes, yeah. But we'll talk about how we can do that for free as well as for cheap. So don't worry. I too understand. Hiring the right people, so bringing on the right teams, and what are some of the challenges and different criteria that we got to think about when we're hiring remote teams or volunteers, and we'll talk about it as well, versus the stuff we do. And the last one is respect, because I think it's really important as humans, but it's especially important in the context of remote teams. So, having goals. My dad is a wonderful man who, as a kid, always told me You don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. And as corny as that is, I think it's essentially, wait, you don't plan to fail. Yeah, I got it right. You failed to plan. There we go. As corny it is, I think that sums up this slide better than anything I can say, right? With your team, this idea of having goals is not so much a tip as it is a state of mind. It is when your team, especially is decentralized, it becomes more important that everybody have clear understanding of the organization's missions, their programming goals, and their personal objectives. Those are actually, you can almost put those in two buckets, right? Me as the volunteer, what is my responsibility? And what is X-Org Music Heals trying to do? And how do I, as little Nejeed, fit into that bigger thing? And clarity around that is so important. The other reason that's so important, more than just the existential reason, is because, especially with remote teams and especially with nonprofit remote teams, mission drift becomes a real challenge. We all want to fundamentally make the world a better place. We wouldn't give up high salaries, better paying jobs, less hours, unless we believed what we were doing. But, especially when you don't get to have those daily huddles, or the in-person interactions, or to have an executive director or whoever leading you and making sure she keeps you, kind of in what you're doing, the risk of mission drift and then becoming ineffective as a worker is so dangerous. How do you deal with that? You put a plan in place. You build those goals. So it's your job as someone who's managing or a volunteer or a staff member to kind of steer that person back into the right channels. That doesn't mean you close their ability to make input, but it's important to keep them on track, so to speak, and that is more challenging by having them not there. So, like I said, this isn't something you do. This is just something you got to be cognizant of. But the doing part is obviously the setting the goals and working with them, etc. On a smaller level, one thing that's worked really well for everywhere I've worked is having those tangible, written, weekly goals. I know people are like, that's a lot of work. These are volunteers. They only do 10 hours or 5 hours or 2 hours a week. But if there's something they can, there's some study that said when you cross off something off a list, it's like psychologically super, I don't know, it's like gives you a high or something. There's something to that, right? Let them have their list. Let them understand as a volunteer, as a staff member, what they're responsible for. Let them partake in the making of that list. And when that's the case, you're going to find with those goals, with that sandbox, as we like to say, you're going to find a lot more efficiency. I can tell a little bit about at End Poverty Now. When I was there, we set daily, weekly, and quarterly goals, as well as that's for a person, for a volunteer or a staff member. That's separate from the organization's goals. And the really cool part is if you're super organized, and I never was, but I wish I had been, where you could then plot everyone's individual goals and plot it to what the org's goals are for the same period, right? You can see how you become part of this bigger, larger mission. And sometimes it's laborious to do them, right? It's a pain in the backside, but the efficacy and the empowerment that comes with it is without anything, like there's nothing comparable. So that's really important, and we did it, and I wish we'd done it better. Because we had people in Rwanda and the Philippines and God knows where else, but we couldn't even do it very effective as well as we should have for our own Montreal office. So that's a learning. I'm speaking about it. We did it, but we didn't do it as effectively, and I hope you guys do it better. The next practice is scheduling. Especially when dealing with scattered workers, making a schedule and keeping a schedule is really important. Set up one-to-ones with your remote staff, whether it's phone calls or Skypes, daily texts, whatever works for her or for him, do it. Sometimes it's best to, when you bring somebody new on, to learn a little bit about what their habits are, what their medium is. Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message. Well, if you are talking in the wrong channel, nobody's going to pay attention, even if it's the most important thing anything's ever said, right? It's like, so that's really important. Set these, build the expectations, and then don't miss them, especially for remote workers. And why? Let's get into that for a second. With your local staff, and Ellen and Phil will tell you, I'm the worst, right? I cancel or I'm late or God knows what all the time. But They see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off every single day. They see me being the last person to leave the office every day. They understand that this is not me being a jerk, this is just me being me, right? But a remote team member doesn't see that. All the soft stuff, all the human is taken away. Don't miss those meetings. But there's also another practical purpose. You know, Ellen will grab me in the, I'm picking on Ellen, sorry, she's right here. Ellen will grab me in the hall and say, Nejeed, what do you think of this, or whatever. But a remote team member, especially if they're in a different time zone, or they're in a place where they don't have great internet access or phone access, they might build a list of stuff to talk to you about. If you don't get to that weekly meeting or monthly or daily, whatever it is, they're missing stuff on that list that they probably need to do the next day or week or months of work. And so Ellen can grab me and say, I need you before I go home or whatever. Your person in Botswana can't, you know? And so the impact and the exponentialization of the damage by missing those meetings is so important. So build a schedule and keep a schedule. So important.
Yeah. As someone who's worked remotely, I found that the moment I really took ownership of running the agenda for my boss, so I would walk into those meetings now with basically, every day as things come up, I'm just adding to the agenda, add it to the top of the list as it comes up, and then there it is. And also, it now makes my work way more visible to my boss in a way it wasn't when I was like, well, what did I do last week?
And we'll talk about some tools we can all use to actually do that, make it that much easier. But when I was doing research for this with my team, the value of video conferencing over phone calls is phenomenal. There's, again, some data on it. I don't have it cited here, but seeing someone's face, if you can get that internet connection, we have FaceTime, we have WhatsApp, we have Facebook video, everything now. We have Skype. Of course, everyone has Skype. I don't think Keela would be Keela without Skype, to be honest, right? Use them. The value of that, the way that you can kind of fake being in the room a little bit, right? And that adds a lot of value. So build a schedule, set it, stay within it, stay focused, have a list, but don't miss that challenge. I can tell you a quick story about, we have an awesome member on our team called Ayush. He rides a motorcycle on the weekend, he's amazing. But he's also in Nepal. That's a beautiful motorcycle ride, by the way. I've seen photos, it's nothing. It's something, it's breathtaking. But Ayush is like 13 hours ahead of us here. And he's a fundamental part of what he's one of 9 people, right? He is the company. And we found it hard, and he felt alienated a little bit. So what we did is I do a daily check-in with him, and a couple times a week we do video check-ins. And to see his wonderful smile every single time, it makes you feel like, okay, Ayush is here. He's around. He's able to sort of feel the team. And that is it's an honest example of how much something as stupid as Skype, which doesn't work half the, friggin' time, can make a difference. So despite, find the one that works for you and use it because it's a lot of value. Now, counter to everything I just said, it's break the schedule. And when I say break the schedule, I don't mean cancel your meetings. I mean do something that's not scheduled. So be open and comfortable with communication outside of scheduled time if you can. Why? Because serendipity. Because random thoughts. Because there's a human side to that thing. It's not so structured. And in doing that, you're making them feel more at home or at work or whatever the word you want to use is, right? And that's really important. Now, while I don't want you to mimic your personal relationships, I don't think that's a good idea, you don't ask your mom or your wife or your best friend to schedule a call to tell you about this brilliant thing that happened or whatever. You just do it. And while sometimes that might not be possible, if you can allow for a little bit of that serendipity, it can be really valuable. In fact, the Harvard Business Review highlights the importance of initiating impromptu interactions with your remote team. And they talk about the water cooler moments that you've got to try to replicate, right? So think about it remember in offices that they used to have those water coolers where you literally go to fill up your water bottle. Well, or your mug or whatever it was, you're essentially trying to replicate that for Ayush in Nepal, right? How can you do that? Well, you guys had a Slack conversation. A lot of organizations that use Slack actually have a channel called the water cooler. or something like that. So it's a place where you can talk about bad dates or elections you didn't like or sports scores or great plays or new artists or whatever it might be. But what that does is it makes Ayush and Nepal or whoever it is make them feel at home and makes them start to build that trust, that human intimate, if that makes sense, element, and that's really important. So whether it's using tech or Skype or whatever, try to replicate some of those accidental moments and break with the monotony of the schedule. It's also just fun, right? You want to have fun with your staff, with your teams and your staff and your volunteers as well. The water cooler is often the place that happens in the office. I forget to do my hair and I look ridiculous, then everyone makes fun of me. It's great, it's bonding. Ayush doesn't get that. How do we replicate that? Phil takes a photo and then laughs at me on Slack. It's perfect, right? It works really well. Consistent treatment is the next one. He does take photos, by the way. It's really funny. Consistent treatment. I'm going to start this with a little story or a personal. Sometimes I forget we have remote staff. I do. I remember we had a team huddle. We have a staff member in Toronto and Ayush in Nepal and a gentleman in Taiwan. Okay, that's 3 of our 10 people, 9-10 people are away. But everyone else is in the office. And I remember it was about a month or 2 months ago, I started our weekly huddle, Monday morning, first thing a week, and I forgot to dial somebody in. It's on me, I called, I apologize, I should have said cake, because I screwed up. But it's really easy to fall into the trap of favoring the people you see every day. You have a win, everyone high fives, there's hugs all around. You have a loss, people kind of mourn or whatever, I don't want to exaggerate it, but together, right? They're there, they see the ups, they see the downs. The problem is the person or the people who are away don't. And building trust, building intimacy, all the stuff we just talked about is lost. So as a leader, whether it's of a volunteer or a paid staff, it doesn't matter. It's your responsibility to work extra hard to make sure that you are not forgetting Ayush or Suman or any of the other people, because they deserve that high five and that hug in the same way, in whatever way you can replicate. And if you don't, you're going to alienate them, you're going to give them low morale, you're going to decrease their love for what they're doing, and eventually they're not going to do as good work. It's literally that simple. It's also the right thing to do, but from a purely work efficiency perspective, you're going to lose that. And there's a lot of data to show this. We try to do stuff where if we're having like a team dinner, we send food delivery to the person in Toronto, or it's a little bit more difficult in Nepal, I'll be honest. Food delivery services don't exist there in the same way, at least that I have access to. But the idea that you send a cake to someone in Toronto when we're all celebrating and we made our KPIs for the month or whatever it is, right? It sounds so stupid though, it really does. But the value of it, it's not missed because they feel part of the team, they feel appreciated, and they don't feel like any of you or any of us are picking favorites. And I just mentioned I've struggled with this one, and it's because I'm a person. I love the human side of it, and so for me, and I know this is a weakness in my leadership, and it's something I've worked, especially after a couple months ago, especially hard. I actually talk to Ayush almost every day now. I didn't forget him, but I talk to him every day just not to overcompensate, but because I really want to make sure he feels that I care and I want to be as best a leader as I can, and that's one of the mechanisms like communication to do that. Speaking of communication, open lines of communication is sort of the next kind of key mechanism. And this one is something that is super easy to say and super hard to do, right? Communication is like the fundamental human challenge. Whether it's at the office or in your marriage or with your kids, it doesn't matter. It's hard, right? And it's especially hard when they're not there. One reason that I wanted to highlight right at the beginning about why this is important is because everyone, whether they're a volunteer that does 1 hour a week or they're the executive director, it's important for them to buy into what you're doing. They need to feel like their voices are heard. Eli kind of was mentioning, I heard when you were talking about it, you feel like sometimes decisions are made before you even have a chance to think about contributing, let alone contributing. You don't even get the option to know that there's something to contribute to. If you do that and people don't feel their opinions matter, they're gonna leave or they're gonna do bad work, of which neither you probably want, right? So that's really important. The other thing is that remote teams are often the ones who know the situations better than you do for stuff that's on the ground, right? They might actually have a different perspective, whether it's cultural, whether it's temporal, whatever. And if you are not accessible, and or they don't feel like they have your ear, pun intended, right? You're going to be able to do your work less effectively. Sometimes they understand the context better. Sometimes they need to make a decision quickly. You need to keep those lines open. And we are blessed with technology. I mean, we're talking to a tech group, right? There's lots of options to use technology. And at the end of this, we'll talk about some of the ones you can use, whether it's Skype or Slack or whatever it is, or Kila for that matter. There is opportunities to do it, but you can have the best tech in the world, but if you don't know how to turn it on, it doesn't matter, right? So having it as a principle that you live by is really important. Back to my love of research. One thing that's important is knowing how, so which medium is important. 77% of remote teams prefer communication by email, 44%, and phone, 43%. There are lots of ways to communicate, but those are the two biggest buckets of them. What's interesting though is in the same study, 23% noted that long email chains are the bane of their existence. I hate it. And with the giggles, I feel like we all do too, right? It's like you have to crane your head and, just to get to the end of it to figure out what the question was before 49 people answered, right? And then if somebody forgets to reply, oh, God forbid, you have to go back and email. It's horrible. So, how do you do that? Well, we'll talk about some tech. And Slack, obviously, is the biggest one for that. It's the kind of the game changer it's attempting to be anyway, in terms of communication. So, great. The next piece is Jack, question?
Before you go, how do you start asking for your teammates' opinion when, say, you are in charge of the project?
Yep. I'm going to answer that question in two different ways. The first one is a really stupid answer, and that's just ask. Sometimes people forget how easy asking can be. It's just asking, right? Asking. And I asked this, I did it to Phil today. How do you feel about X? Just ask him, and she or he will respond. But that's the stupid answer. The real answer is set those expectations at the beginning of the project or the beginning of the engagement with that volunteer or person. So make sure it's a part of your culture, at least at the organizations that I've had an opportunity to lead, having that kind of communication be a part of the culture of the project or organization is super key. So you got to be able to share that cultural value at the beginning of stuff. And it's not always easy, but I think the earlier that you can set the tone, the easier it becomes that they buy into that, right? They have expectations up front, and they're able to. I know it's not the perfect answer, but I think for us, I read a memo, because I'm a lawyer and I like memos, to anyone who starts working on our team. And in it, at the end of it, I say, you have my phone number, my email address, my Twitter handle, my Facebook. I'm always available, and I expect you to be open and honest with me about what you agree with and also what you don't. In a respectful and responsible way, of course, and not in a way that's incredibly inefficient, but I set the tone really early, and I think that's a thing I really would recommend. Thanks for asking that question. Professional development. So this is really important regardless of whether your team is remote or not. I think in the sector we do a bad job of this. I think I see a few people nodding your head like, yeah, I wish I'd had more, I wish I'd better. Now, it's hard when our teams sit in the same room or on the same floor. It's harder when our teams are in different cities or provinces or states or countries or continents for that matter. But why it's important is because everybody, at least I believe, has an innate want to grow into what they're doing, right? Volunteers included. Time is so valuable, and so people want to get better. And sometimes while opportunities come across, they happen to come up, like coming tonight. This is a professional development opportunity for all of us, right? It's something that it might just happen if you might overhear it in the hallway or by the water cooler or whatever it is. For the people who are working remote, they don't get that opportunity. And unless you do a really good job of offering it to them, encouraging them, making them do it even, in a respectful, responsible way, you're going to get better performance from that employee, and whether she's in Nepal or in South Africa, it doesn't matter. And because of technology, so many things, I think this included, are recorded, are live streamed, are X, Y, Z thing. There's a whole, whole whack of on-demand free resources that we can do. And to the point of free, there is stuff you can find with mentors. I love my mentors. I wouldn't even be standing on these 2 feet without the support of the mentors I've had. We can all find our volunteers mentors within and without our organizations. And that's professional development. There are so many free workshops like this one or online, like we talked about. And one of the things that I think is really interesting that a lot of people forget is partnerships are a great way to tap into additional professional resources. So, TechSoup or meetups or whatever, as you build, partners, our accounting firm, for example, offers all these workshops about X, Y, and Z. They're free. And if you allow or make your teams to go to some of them, that is professional development. And some people don't always take advantage of those, and especially for remote teams, that's incredibly important. The other reason is people want to feel invested in. You want people to think, I'm spending my time or my money or my political, social capital, whatever it is, to say, I'm going to send Amanda, who's on my team, to this lecture or to give her the time and the platitude to do that because I care about her, because I want her to be a more valuable member of my team. And with remote people, it's increasingly important for that. So my next breakout question, and we're going to do it a little quicker this time, is how do you currently make professional development, both for remote but also for in-person teams, a priority? And I don't want it, my organization does, my organization doesn't, but maybe we can also talk about some of the challenges as to why they do not, or some of the reasons why they do, and how that's been effective. I'll give you a couple minutes, and then we'll try to keep the responses I want open, but pretty short, okay? 2 minutes. Please break out, go back into those, open those conversations up around remote, but also in-person professional.
This kind of really awesome in that they do maybe through like mentorship or other things like
are you based in Vancouver?
Yes, now I am now.
You're in London?
Yeah.
I miss London.
And volunteers and clinical staff are non-clinical staff.
I like the crazy. My wife likes the quiet, I like the crazy shit. It's okay. No, that's really different. so I had no idea I don't know it was there. So it was like I was born here, but it was home in some ways. I got to learn a lot about myself. But I go along.
I think it's kind of sort of a big
But now you're here for me. That's a commitment moving on to the
yeah, because I met someone there as well.
story of our lives.
In general, like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, the London boy this is it. But also, there's some incredible work being done in Vancouver. And also our clients in the US, we do have growing numbers. Send us an email.
Definitely get in touch.
Wonderful. Take care.
I'll be here for another 5 sessions.
Try to break it down, and I check on the enough, so I go back to quite a lot. But yeah, the reason I just check it with them before it's kind of like the
co-working space, like keep yourself, like keep the mix and
will attend once a week.
So some of the webinar sessions have the ability to do breakout rooms where people can do basically this kind of experience for like 10 minutes, and then they all come back and share their experience like we're going to do here. That might be something really important so people get a bit more of an intimate experience from the webinar.
Can I ask everyone to start to wrap up the comments, please? Sorry, it's just a time thing.
Just on maybe the density to really make it down the chapter.
You guys are my favorite team already.
All right, okay, we're good.
So very quickly, anybody have any revelations that they felt was either very common or very different they want to share quickly about some of the challenges of both professional development for remote staff or volunteers and also professional development in and of itself in the sector? Because it's something that's not talked about enough. Anything quick?
Well, I find it odd that none of us invited the rest of our team to this event.
I invited my team. Okay. Well, 7 of them didn't come, so.
It occurred to me that I didn't invite my own team. and my own boss here for this.
But that's exactly the problem, right? We don't, as a lawyer, I can say professional development is literally part of the only way I can keep my license, right? I have to do 18 hours, 12 hours of substantive, 6 hours of ethics. Ethics, you can make a lot of jokes, but I have to do it. So, and you know, we don't do it in this sector enough, and the fact that it's not even, you know, this was free, and we didn't even think to that, and that's exactly part of the problem that we're diagnosing, right? Anybody else? Great point, thank you. Your table had some lively discussion. Anything to share?
I'll share. We have moved from doing larger professional development conferences to quarterly webinars, and that is a combination of internal staff and external folks that we invite in to present. And it's mandatory for our clinical staff as well. Our volunteers and other non-clinical staff are always welcome to attend. So it's in one way really positive. They get up to the minute current professional development, but they lose the face-to-face that they loved.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really interesting about that what Ashley brought up is don't forget there are people on your team that have expertise, right? Professional development is so often seen as outward looking, but sometimes we can look to our own teams and find a lot of value. So start to build a culture where that is important. We used to do at my own law firm, we did lunch and learns, where one of the senior partners or someone who was working on a really interesting file would get to present that as an expert or somebody who had a lot of experience. Now, why can't we as a sector bring that knowledge to our teams? Why can't, you know, somebody who knows a lot about a project you're working on share that project? Because group thinking around that is going to be great, and that is professional development. Or somebody who found a new piece of technology, or somebody on the fundraising team or the development team might be using a new software. Well, share that that's the case. Show the kind of reporting or the kind of data you can get from that and how that could empower everybody on the team. But too often at our organizations, especially remote ones, we build these silos, right? Because we're lonely, because we're all overworked, because doesn't have to be. And so internal and external is really key. And one thing I wanted to note on top of that was that there are increasingly a lot of on-demand free online resources. You know, at tons of organizations, whether it's N10 or TechSoup or the nonprofit news or all these other things, they have these things you can watch, and in podcasts, you know, videos, lectures. And if you want something live, because there is something about a real person that's not recorded, there are a lot of conferences now that you can do at discounted rates streamed. So they're real, they're live, you get a little bit of the flavor of being there, but it's a significant decrease in cost, right? And so that's another option for both remote and in-person teams as a way to make it safe.
Yeah, so I was once in an organization, and we were doing like an online training, and they were, you know, instead of just saying, here's the link, figure it out when you have the time to do it, but they really scheduled it in and said, like, here's a 2-hour block, no one's having any meetings, this is everyone's job. And so they really scheduled in these trainings to make sure it could happen, because otherwise it's always going to be the last thing in the long list of things we need to do.
And we're all overworked. I know that, you know that, our spouses and children know that, for sure. But sometimes this training, most of the time I would argue, this training can actually make your life easier. The more knowledge you have, the more theoretically you should be empowered by that knowledge. And it might be something that allows you to do better at your job and take less time, right? And like, for example, I would hope, you know, this kind of lecture, not me, but somebody smarter than me, would help you work better so that you have more time to give to programming and doing good or raising more money and spending with the people we want to spend our time outside the office. I think that's a nice little segue, because my next tip or thing to think about, which is big number 7 or 8 or whatever, 6, is hire the right people. And I want to start at the very top. This is not just about paid staff. Picking the right volunteers means putting them through a rigorous engagement process, hiring, whatever you want to call it, right? It's as important, I would argue, as picking paid staff. Because they might not get paid, but they do have a cost, right? They have a cost of your time. They have a cost of the quality of their work if it's not good enough. They have a cost because they are, especially for those of us who work at organizations that are very volunteer driven, they are the organization, right? They're the people who get stuff done. Without them, our organizations, many of them are dead, right? So, picking them is then important. If they're the ones holding up the house, we gotta make sure that they can. And there is a space and a role for tons of different people. You just gotta put the right bums in the right buckets, right? That's really important. And so, especially for remote teams, there's a few things we gotta think about. Communication, I've harped on and on and on about, and I'm gonna do it again. Having somebody who communicates really strongly. Somebody who's confident to share their honest opinions, especially when it's not always, you don't know them that well, right? Somebody who's got a lot of respect, because communication is so challenging, sometimes if you say something, an opinion, it can come off wrong if they don't have that underlying respect. Trustworthy is another word that we throw around a lot. How do you learn to trust somebody? I have no idea, right? Especially when they're remote. But it is something to at least think about. I don't have a solution to that. And the last one that I really want to talk about is self-motivation. When you work remotely, you don't have the someone to put you on their back, right? You are some woman working and the only person in that office working on a crazy important project. She doesn't have the support when things are tough. So having that ability to self-start is so important, right? And you can test for that in lots of ways. Obviously, run through interviews and do the role-playing and personality stuff. But one of the things that we do at where I currently work at Kila is that we actually put people through a written and or behavioral assignment, simulation and a written assignment. People think we're crazy. A lot of people have stopped the hiring process because they're like, I don't want to do that if I'm not going to get the job. But I need to know, especially if they're remote, that they are able to do what I need them to do to communicate what they're doing to me and to our users or whatever it is in the best effective way. And so if they aren't willing to even do that, whether they're a volunteer or paid staff, I would argue it's not worth hiring them, especially if they're a remote staff. Right? And that perspective people think I'm crazy about, but I'm going to go with it.
Can you give an example of a behavioral assignment?
Sure.
What would that be?
So we are currently hiring for a customer success person. Okay? So one of the roles of that customer success person is to help all of you using Kila use it better, right? It's for our existing clients. It's not a sales role, it's nothing like that. Part of that is writing the help articles and doing troubleshooting or whatever it is. So we send them an assignment that's got written portions. We also ask them to make a video of what they would do to teach somebody how to use or solve a problem, right? We get to learn their personality, the quality of their work, whatever else, all the benefits. And they send us a really awkward YouTube link where there's some, standing up hi, I'm Kelly and I wanted this, thanks for this question. Here's how or whatever it is, right? And so that's an example of it. We also simulate conflict. Conflict simulation is really interesting. I studied at law school, which was really, for me, that fascinating. So that's where that idea came from. I don't think that's what we do enough, especially for remote teams. And we've had conflict in the last 6 months with members of our remote teams, if only because we didn't do a good enough job of setting the parameters on communication, but also simulate the different behavior, which was really interesting. So those are 2 examples that we use pretty regularly. The last one, and ironically, one of the hardest ones, and that's respect. Not respecting people, I all know you're good people, but respecting people's work habits. So, for example, Phil is runs my entire communications team. He is a phenomenal writer, builds our community, he's fantastic. He also does not like to be bothered when he's got his headphones in and he's writing. I have learned that. It took a little time for me to learn. So, when I talk about respect, I don't want people to misunderstand it and say, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk, that's obvious. What matters is respecting how people work. So, how do you do that? You set clear guidelines. We've joked about making do not disturb signs. We have an open concept office, and hanging it over our monitors. Ellen wants to put glitter on them. I want her to as well. But, it's a really fun activity, but the point behind it is it's a guideline. If I'm got my headphones in or my do not disturb sign or I blocked off time in my Google Calendar, leave me alone. It's not that I'm being a jerk, it's that I have things to do, right? And that's really important. So set those guidelines, block off time and schedules that people, like their alone time, right? Or their grind time or whatever it is. Especially if your people are working from home, it's even harder because you can't see the sign you can't see the headphones, you can't see the sign. You've got to communicate those things. It's twofold responsible. One, as the leader or the manager or the coordinator, to understand and learn and ask, hey Eli, I need you to know what your habits are. But it's also Eli's responsibility to say, between 4 and 6 every day, I'm doing this. If you call me, I'll break my phone and I'm going to send you the bill, right? It's both parties in this relationship. So as managers and leaders, we have to do that, but also as people who are accountable to other people, we have to do that. And that's really important. I am not so good at setting the boundary between work and personal life. Especially when I was a younger leader, in my late 20s or even early 20s, I assumed everybody worked as much as me. That is not a right assumption, right? It is not. I don't have children yet, and so I don't have kids to wake up at 8 p.m. if I phone somebody's cell phone. I work till 11 o'clock almost every day. To me, 75-hour weeks are the baseline. Apparently, that's not the case. So, there are, and jokes aside, of course, we're all smiling. The problem with that is some of the effects of that kind of thing. If your boss calls you at 10 p.m., you're likely not going to not pick up the phone. You're going to begrudgingly pick it up, but you're like, oh, smokes, that's my boss. Pick up the phone. But what that's doing to your teams, especially if there's a remote where you can't bring them a donut to apologize, or whatever it might be, is you're making them alienated because they'll love their time at work less, right? Because if they feel like you interrupted something that was important, well, how the hell was I supposed to know it was important? You live in Zimbabwe. Like, I can't possibly know that, right? Set those boundaries and respect them as leaders, but also as workers, respect when, your colleagues are available or not available. This is not just a leadership conversation. This is for all of us, whether we're at the bottom of the food chain or at the top at our organization. It doesn't matter. This is an important lesson to learn. The other thing that's really interesting is some time zones suck. And while we are often brush off, oh, we'll make it work, we often don't make it work. Poor Ayush, I picked on him a lot this lecture, but Ayush, he lives in Nepal. I have to do my daily call, I have to do it at 11 or 10 p.m. here in Vancouver. And as the CEO of the company or as the leader of our organization, that is my duty. I can't expect him to stay up till 11 p.m. to talk to me. If you're in leadership, one of the things that I think I learned pretty early is it's on you, right? Don't think because you have a title that looks like this that people need to accommodate your schedule. In my years and years of experience managing teams, if you're at the top, you're the one making the accommodations because you have to set that example, right? Because it is your duty to get your team, soldiers, if we're going to use that analogy, to do what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for it. So don't think that it's this way up. You got to accommodate everyone on your team, and that has the added benefit of respect, right? Respecting them, respecting their opinions, making them, especially if they feel that they're in Zimbabwe or working from home or wherever it is, they feel like, oh, somebody made an accommodation for me, and that makes them feel more empowered and more engaged in the organization's culture and then thus the organization's vision. At the end of the day, we all want our teams and ourselves to do the best work we can for the organizations we're working at. The last thing is don't make people work too much. And I have, it's not an hours thing, it's not it's not a time of day, it's an actual hours thing. There's this Professor Aaron Reed at BU, at Boston University, who said that the majority of managers couldn't tell, in the study she did, couldn't tell whether her staff actually worked 80 hours from the output or just pretended to work 80 hours. And so while I know what I need to do and I need it for my work, but I also need, I love my job, right? So I love to do what I do, but I wouldn't put those kinds of hours on anybody else because probably, according to the data, they're not effective anyway. So you're going to make them unhappy, you're going to make them dislike the relationship, and especially if they're remote, you're not going to get any opportunities to win them back, or it's a lot harder, right? So think about that, and it's one that I definitely struggle with. Work-life balance isn't the same for everybody, right? It's like a work-life relationship, and it's constantly changing. When I got married, it wasn't the same as when I wasn't married, right? And my current team has known both Nejeeds, right? And so those are differences, and those things change, and that speaks to constantly building that rapport and setting the expectations and doing those reviews and those communications. So I can say, Ellen, you can't bother me after 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. because my wife will get angry, right? That changed halfway through a relationship that I had with my team. It's important for everyone, whether you're talking to your manager or talking as a manager, to continue that conversation so that respecting the work-life balance or the work habits is really important. Last but not least, embrace the cloud. So we could give hours and hours and hours of lectures of the different tools. Slack is on my list. So you guys did that a few weeks ago, right, Eli?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of technology because it is phenomenal. I talk to somebody through Facebook voice in Nepal every day. That's amazing, right? And it enables him to do as good or better work than I do every single day, right? That's an example of a cloud technology. So does everyone here know what the cloud is? Yeah, good. It's not the puffy white things in the sky, but the ability to log on to the internet to a software from the internet from anywhere in the world that has an internet connection, right? Kila is a cloud software. Skype is a kind of cloud software. Most cloud-based tools do not involve you to download anything, right? So you can do it from a web browser. That's one of the, it used to be a defining characteristic. The lines are, of course, blurry now. But Slack, Trello, Asana, Kila, Google Apps, they're all examples of cloud tools. Now, we don't have time right now, but I want you to all think about and maybe go back to your teams and do a little bit of an audit of what tools you use, how you use them, and what's most effective. And I think, nope, none of this is high level. So, it's an important thing to constantly be doing, not to let it overtake your work, but to make sure you're using the most effective tools for the things that you're using them. Because a lot of people buy software, and I don't want to pick on Blackbaud, but I'm going to because I know it's fair. I feel like that's the fair one. A lot of people buy really expensive software made by Blackbaud that sucks, and they pay a lot of money, and they never use it, right? And so that's bad for two reasons. One, because instead of Blackbaud, they could be using other things. And I'm not saying we're a competitor to Blackbaud, but there's lots of different tools. The second thing is that money morally should be going to a better use, right? Your constituents, whether it's sexual health or gender violence or the environment or human rights, deserves that money because the people who gave it to you, whether it's a government or an individual or someone's time, expect you to spend it in the most effective way possible. So go back, do a tech audit, figure out what you're using and whether it's effective for what you want it to be doing. And whether you choose a Blackbaud product or Skype or Slack or Kila, I don't care. I care that you're doing it in the most effective way. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tools that we use to manage our operations, as not so much saying this is the best way, but this is a way to think about it. So Slack. We sent 1,382 messages on Slack last week. And I was on my honeymoon. I really, really delayed honeymoon. I didn't log in, so that wasn't me. So I was away, and my team, who are way smarter and way better at their jobs than I could ever dream of, sent 1,300 messages, right? Slack helped define those conversations. It helped to decrease those email chains we all hate. It helped to hold people accountable in conversations. It allowed people to send funny photos. And all of those things fed into all the things we talked about today. I'm a big fan of Slack. They're also a Vancouver company, and as Eli mentioned, they do great things for nonprofits. I am a huge fan. Google, the all-knowing, all-seeing. Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Calendar, and Gmail are phenomenal. And unfortunately, I'm not sponsored by them, but I wish I was because, they do, and for the nonprofit sector, we are very blessed because we all get access to free tools from them, right? We get the same as the education, which is X number of licenses for free for our teams. That means you can have your @musicheals.com or .org email address run by Google Gmail, which is amazing, right? it is so good that Kila is integrating into Google because it's that good. You know, like it's amazing and it's so easy to use and there's a lot of help resources and it's almost at this point ubiquitous in the sector. I mean, it's everyone. My personal email is run by Gmail. My work email is run by Gmail. My board that I sit on email is run by Gmail. So everyone can be crazy, right? They're not that good at marketing. Only Apple is that good at marketing. Skype. I whine and complain about Skype, but it is a lifesaver. We Skype every single day at Kila. Microsoft is one of our partners, and I have a funny story to tell about Skype. We had an onboarding session with Microsoft, and Skype wouldn't work. And I called the guy on the phone, and I was like, "Isn't this one of your products?" He's like, "Man, we hate Skype." But jokes aside, it is a lifesaver. It allows us to build that human. I can see Ayush's face, and I can see that smile. I can talk to them, see them, and they can feel like they're in the room. Yeah.
Interested to see you using Skype and Slack.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about why you use both?
So we only use Skype for video calls. Slack's video is really bad.
So they have a Hangouts plugin?
Hangouts is the one Google Apps tool that's not that good is Hangouts, especially for us in countries with low bandwidth. So Nepal, Taiwan, it's crap. And that may be bad luck from us, but we find it tough. And they're also trying to do the opposite. They're building their own native video as well. I don't know. They've got a calls feature now in Slack, so you could like a voice. They're going to move towards video for sure. Not that good. The one thing we might bitch and complain about Skype, but it's been around for as long as like we can remember it when we had the internet, and so I just think it's the best. And they used to have a restriction on the number of video, and they took that away. So,
what about the instant messaging and groups component?
We use Slack.
Yeah, we do.
Because it's the most traceable. In terms of accountability and structure, Slack, you can build what you don't want is essentially the email chain that's forever, like a text message chain, right? There's that thing Hillary Clinton, when she was the Secretary of State, used to have all those WhatsApp groups with all the world leaders, and there's a lot of funny videos about it. But the problem with that is you can't have different channels. And the search functionality in a lot of those instant messages are not that good. Slack has worked really hard on their search capabilities. And so that's one of the reasons I'm not that bright, and so my memory isn't that good. And so, but I remember like one word from a conversation. Well, dongle, how the heck are you going to find that in a really long thing? It'll allow you to find it and then build the context around it. That's one of the reasons. It allows you to have a stream of consciousness and structure in the same app. To me, that's a lot of value. We used to use WhatsApp and Skype text. And about 6 months ago, we made the switch over, and it's made a big difference. Yeah. So that's my own personal perspective. Some of the developers still use Skype, just when they're back and forth with each other on a specific matter. But I'm a big fan of building institutional capacity. If, God forbid, something happens to somebody, or they quit, or they move on, or they have a baby, and you can't get a hold of them, Slack allows you, as an organization, to have that memory. What Skype doesn't, WhatsApp doesn't. So whatever you use, email doesn't. In fact, email's the worst, right? Because it's that's again Slack, and especially for global teams where people might change or people might be transferred or projects might end. You don't want to lose all that knowledge, all that wisdom, all those files, whatever it might be, and that's where we found value. Yeah.
How do you deal with people who don't reply to emails? They don't respond on Slack. They make excuses when they're Google Hangout. They only respond when there's 8 person meetings because they have no choice.
I think
right in front of you.
Absolutely. I unfortunately don't have a crystal ball. What I can say is we've hired 30 people. We've interviewed 30 people for the job we're currently hiring for. And communication, response time, whatever, is a big part of that. So you set the expectation at the beginning. We haven't got a person to fill that role yet because there are certain things we're not willing to give up on. That's one of them. The ability to be accountable and to communicate really well is really important. So you can start to solve that problem at the very beginning, right? But humans are humans, and we're innately flawed creatures. And so at some point, somebody on one of your teams is going to, in fact, stop responding. So I'm a big carrot and stick kind of guy, right? I've fired a volunteer before. It's not my first choice. It's like my 30th choice. But your time, your organization's money, etc., is valuable. If at some point they don't, you have to know that people are, they don't have an endless string that they can use. So set the expectation that, look, if you're not doing your job and you get the warnings and you still aren't doing your job, you're no longer going to be part of this team. And I'm not being a jerk. We in the sector have to be efficient. It's such an important thing we have to learn as a sector. McKinsey did a study and they said that this nonprofit sector wastes $100 billion a year to preventable inefficiency. That's 1 in every $8 donated. Preventable inefficiency. So, if somebody's not responding, I'm not saying pick up the phone and fire them. I'm saying don't be scared that eventually you might have to do that. The other thing is, and we learned this a little bit in my old life, was find out what interests, like what drives them, what their motivators are, and play to those things, right? They might be doing this for a reason that you don't understand, and when you pull those levers, when you press those buttons, they're going to engage, because a lot of us are in this because we care, most of us, right? So find what that thread means and how that affects their everyday work. And that goes to values we talked about a little bit ago. It goes to making them feel like they're an important part of the team and they're a necessary part of the team. If you can do all of those things and they're still not doing them, fire them. No, and I'm not being callous. I think your time is important and so is the organization's.
I was just going to jump in too, because it's come up, not necessarily music skills, but some past work I've done with volunteer coordination. Sometimes also just asking them why they're not responding, because not all the time, but it may be an obstacle with one of the technologies, and they don't feel comfortable expressing that they're finding a challenge with it, and maybe shifting the communication for that specific person when appropriate.
Does it get tiring when you have to deal with more than one of those? Everyone works differently, and as the leader, you have to talk to each one, find out what's wrong with the system.
But that's leadership.
Another person works differently, and they don't want to talk to each other.
Look, it's not easy. Like, nobody said it was going to be easy, right? I don't think any of us, I think we all know it's not. But again, I harp back, build those expectations at the beginning. Set up this, if you're in leadership, set up those systems now or yesterday. And I think that'll help. And also, do that tech audit, because sometimes what you were using before is no longer effective. And so, if that's the case, it's your responsibility to find those hiccups and make the changes, right? It's really key. And we did that with Slack and Skype. A lot of stuff was being missed on the Skype chat because, it wasn't effective. So we made that change, and we have seen an uptick in efficacy. And so you can do the same thing, right? Maybe they're really tied to their phone, so make sure that they've got the Slack app, or it's different things, right? People don't, or maybe their computer, they don't get the notification. Who knows what it is? But like you said, it could be something so small that leads to this big problem, and really it's just a conversation about process. The last two I want to mention quickly are, if you're, people think that CRMs, customer or constituent relationship management tools, are just for the fundraising teams. They're not. Every stakeholder in the organization should be in there, whether it's a volunteer or your biggest donor, your partners, your board members, the guy on the street who yelled at you your brilliant idea. Put him in there. Keep that institutional capacity, because maybe your predecessor or maybe an intern or maybe someone else in the organization also has this woman who changed the organization's life or donated $10. Both are really important, right? And so keep a tab on those. Your heads are all really smart. The problem is I can't see into them. So I don't know. I don't have the visibility and the transparency of that. Put it in a CRM. There's lots of options. The last thing is a project management tool. Someone talked about building a list of tasks. Eli, I think it was, about expectations, right? What you expect to do, tracking that's being done, and what the people overseeing you or the people you oversee should have done. Use a tool. Asana is a great tool. Gila has a project management tool built in. You have Trello. There's so many options. Find what works best for you. I'd love to say there's one solution to all these things, but there aren't. Different people like different things. Different people work differently. Different people need different functionality. And so, but having something that's integrated into your work process from the beginning or early on builds that culture of accountability. It builds that culture of crossing out, and it keeps it simple. If something happens, you leave, or you transfer your role or whatever it is. So that's a kind of quick overview on some of the tools. Eli's kind of tapping on my door, so I'm going to go back quickly and run through the 8 things that we talked about today. Having goals, setting them, really important. 2, scheduling. 3, break the schedule, pick up the phone, call your staff member in Botswana or Burundi or Peru. She will really appreciate it. Don't forget to wish her happy birthday. Don't forget the personal side, and that comes with breaking the schedule. Treat everybody consistently. You can't hug the person in that woman in whatever country she's in, but find a way to build that personal relationship. 5, communicate. If you don't communicate, especially with those that are far away or across the city or province, you're not going to be able to build any of these foundational things that lead to effective work. 6, prioritize professional development. Put it in their schedules. Make it part of their life. Do it from within and from without your organization. 7, hire the right people and bring on the right volunteers. Ask the questions, especially if they're remote, right from the beginning. And lastly, don't ever forget how important respecting somebody is. As human beings, we all have an incredible amount of human dignity. Don't ever forget that. 2, respect people's work habits. Their yeses, their nos. What inspires them? Respecting somebody can mean doing things that you said you will do. It's not always about what you shouldn't do. Say thank you. Say good job. Make sure they feel respected as people, because their work is probably going to get better. And that's going to do better for all of our organizations, especially when they don't see the smile on your face when you read that memo. Right? When they're far away, that positive, respectful reinforcement is increasingly important. Do your tech audit, please, all of you. We did ours in January, and if any of my team, if you need any recommendations, anything like that, we are here to help you. I love the nonprofit sector. I've dedicated my life to this sector, and I know that you guys are all doing incredible and empowering work, and I just want to see you all do it better, whether your staff are here or they're in Nepal. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm afraid we're running a little over, so we won't do any Q&A now, but we are going to do a head out to a pub afterwards. So that'll be your opportunity to, pigeonhole Nejeed and get a little bit more in depth on some of the tips and tricks of what they actually do. So we have got a couple of minutes here for us to do a quick show and tell. Anyone has something they want to show off? Anyone looking to hire someone? Anyone looking for a new gig? Who's got announcements? Who's got things to share? I know there's always awesome things happening with our friends over at Music Heals. Yes. Chris would insist that you promote your latest upcoming campaign.
I have one.
Well, then come up here. So here's how we model it. So it looks like this. You start off with something. You start with your name. So you say, "Hi, my name's Eli. I am one of the volunteers with NetSquared Vancouver, and we are always looking for new people to come and join our committees. Specifically these days, I'm looking for someone who maybe wants to manage live tweeting at our events, perhaps someone who wants to be our secondary video person when Ashley's not available, or someone who's good at photography, or lastly, bloggers. Basically, if you want to become a multimedia wizard, come join us. We would love to have you to be part of this. And that is under a minute. So come, do the thing. Stand up here, get in front of the camera, tell your thing. I'm going to go and look for I'll do AV backup here.
Perfect.
So you start off with an intro, and then off you go. And I've got, here we go, 1 minute.
Perfect. You already know my name and you know where I'm from. So this is a new campaign that's actually offline, but is going online soon, so I'll talk about it. It's called Covers for the Cause. So basically any musician, any band, any singer, even someone who may not be in music, goes online to a chimp site and creates a fundraising page. they set the parameters. So they say anyone who makes a donation of a particular amount and a song request, they will then cover that song. They'll make a video and post it online. So covers for the cause. That's it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Sounds delightful. Thank you so much. All right, who's next? Who wants someone like
Next up.
have something fancy to show off?
Oh, this is so not fancy.
Come, Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm from Options for Sexual Health, and I'm doing something really strange and new this year. I'm doing something completely analog, kind of. We're doing the Scotiabank half mile and 5K walk run. So if you're interested in doing this and you want to be part of Team Opt, come see me and I will send you the email with all of the details. And I would love to have people join me because I don't run. But this is so important to me that I'm actually going to. So please come and talk to me and I would love to have you a part of Team Opt.
Yay! Anyone else got fun things on the go? Maybe someone's looking for a job right now. This is your chance to come and show off. Come.
Well, I told you we had 30 applications. Keela is looking for a new, brilliant, driven woman or man to join our team as the customer success person. So this is a onboarding role. This is a teaching, essentially, role. It's someone whose job it is to keep our clients and our users really happy, really engaged, and empower them to do better work. We have, you've met a couple of our awesome staff. You stuck with me as well. But if you are interested or you know somebody interested, please be in touch as we are really looking for that firecracker to join our team. Thank you.
Cool. You guys are all so shy and bashful. So, here's what comes next. We are going to be doing two things. So, first of all, you're going to see on your tables, there may well be dishes. On your way out, I ask that you wander those dishes and just drop them on the counter over by the sinks. That will make our lives very handy, and then as you walk out, just like put your chair in behind the table and everything's going to look really fabulous. Then, don't go away because you're going to join the Pied Piper, who today will be Ashley, hands up, and she will, in about 7 minutes, be walking all of you down to Darby's. It's about a block and a half down that way, this side of the street. First round's on us. We'll chat, we'll gossip, we'll have a good time, then we'll send you home safely. So that's the general plan. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have a couple people wandering about half an hour later once we've done the final cleanup. But we'll see you all at our picnic in June. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming out.